Dante Moore is officially going back to school. That's going to have a big impact on the Cowboys in the draft. We'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are answering your Twitter questions, including how can the Cowboys fix the Micah Parsons trade, if at all? We're going to talk about Caleb Downs and if he's a realistic option for Dallas at 12. But let's start with the big news on Wednesday, and that's Dante Moore, who a lot of people had as either the #1 or #2 quarterback in this class. Seemed like a surefire top 5 pick. He's going back to school. And Landon, that makes this one of the worst quarterback classes we've seen in recent memory. How much do you expect that to impact the Cowboys at picks 12 and 20?
Well, first of all, it's going to have a huge impact on me because I had lined up a whole bunch of really bad puns using both his first and his last name that I was going to use throughout the draft season. So I'm really disappointed I got to put that on the shelf. But yeah, I think as far as the Cowboys go, I think there's an obvious answer, right? It's one less guy that's probably going to go above the Cowboys pick at 12, right? And I think that there is implications that you may lose out on an opportunity for like a David Bailey or one of these pass rushers that is kind of just jumbled in at the top that has the combination of being an elite talent at the position that can be drafted, that is valuable enough to be drafted in the top 10. And I think that it's going to play with the math a little bit on the likelihood of teams potentially trading up to go get their quarterback. And again, just one more body to be taken before the Cowboys at a position that they aren't going to draft. But outside of that, like I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on some of these other positions. We'll see. I mean, I think for like the kind of money 5 positions, if you're looking to draft those guys, maybe not corner, because corner is like a really unique situation in this draft. But at defensive end, or if you were looking at tackle for some reason at 12, like all of those guys, are probably at a little bit more risk of losing your #1 target because there's just one less guy that's definitely going to be picked ahead of you.
Yeah, and we should also mention we've seen teams overdraft quarterbacks before. So would it shock me if a Ty Simpson from Alabama ends up going before the Cowboys pick? We saw Daniel Jones go at pick 6 1 year. We saw Michael Penix get drafted at 8 overall. Bo Nix went at 12 overall. So like this, I would not be surprised if this happens. But ultimately, I don't think it's really going to impact Dallas too much at 12. And I really don't expect it to impact them at 20 because you're talking about the difference of one guy in the first 19 picks.
Yeah.
The guys that you want were probably either going to be there anyways or you're not, right? And at 12, honestly, like I keep doing all these mock drafts on Pro Football Focus, and I highly recommend that you should do it. And even tonight, after they've pulled more off the board, you're still getting the same 2 or 3 guys that you're drafting every single time. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, it more than likely what it is, it kind of lessens that outside chance that a top end guy falls to you, like one of the top 5 guys falls to you at 12, or like I mentioned, a guy like who's your favorite defensive end? David Bailey, Ruben Bain, whatever. Like the likelihood that one of those guys that might have been going top 10 because of talent plus positional value falling out to 12, it may have decreased like 5%, or 10%.
At the same time, I mean, we don't want to get too heavy into draft, but I don't see a massive difference between the players that are going. Like, again, go do some mocks. The guys that are being picked at 2 and 3 in this draft, I feel almost the exact the same as I do at pick 12. And that's not like that doesn't mean that you're getting a bad player at 12. There's really just not there's really no top 5 guys in this class outside of Mendoza that you feel great about. So pick the difference in picking at 8 and 12. I don't see it this year.
Well, there's a top 5 guy in this draft, and he could get picked at 12, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. Don't you do? We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this yet, Marcus. But we are going to do this at some point. I will defend myself here.
I won't talk about Taylor Falk today. I feel really good about the caliber of player that you're going to get.
Yes.
And again, we'll go through all the names throughout the draft season. The early contenders for that spot, Sonny Styles. We're going to talk about a safety here in a little bit. I would assume they're going to have their pick of cornerbacks. If you want an offensive tackle, there's going to be some guys available there. I think they're going to be fine. But another question I had for you in the draft is, as you're starting to get into some of the research of this class, you're seeing a big age discrepancy between prospects. And we've got a couple guys, middle first round prospects who are 24, 25 years old. You've got some really young players like Sonny Styles in this class who are 20 years old. With the way college football is set up now with NIL and players being able to play 5 or 6 years, is that going to have an impact on how these evaluators factor in age?
Yeah, and you have to think too that this is probably the last year of the kind of extra year granted for some
Correct.
of these COVID kids, right? Like these kids that were freshmen when COVID hit, they may have been granted an extra year. That's why you're seeing a lot of 25-year-olds more than you probably would. And it's interesting, right? Like you said, like there's a ton of them, and how is it going to affect the draft? Normally, in this sense, you would kind of point these guys out and because they would normally be a little bit more rare, but because you have such a high volume of them, you wonder if it isn't like something that you just have to take it on as a data point, but maybe not weigh as heavily, because if you're just going to if you're going to just kind of cross off guys because they're a certain age, you're taking a pretty hefty chunk at this point out of the draft class. So yeah, I think that there's something to the idea that age is a thing, and we'll talk about all of the reasons that age is important in a prospect, and it's not just about the how old they are when they sign their contract or when they re-sign. There's a lot more to it.
And for the most part, your top prospects in this class are young players, and it's not surprising, right? If you're really good, as a sophomore, as a junior, you're going to go into the draft. And that's why I think Jeremiah Love's 20. No, Reese is 20 or 21. Sonny Styles is young. It's that next tier of guys that's, late first round, early second round. And I honestly don't know how to value them anymore. I mean, I used to be an ageist when it came to prospects. Like I don't want to draft these 24, 25-year-olds. But one of the things that we were talking about pre-show is with the Cowboys being, I don't want to say necessarily in a win now mode, but kind of like I think they pretty clearly have a window here. Are you maybe willing to ignore the age a little bit to get guys that can come in and produce right away?
Yeah, I think for the angle of are they too old, right? Like to be drafted and play. I think that is lessened by all the things that you just mentioned, because the Cowboys are kind of in a window now. I don't think that they need to necessarily worry about the fact that maybe this guy has 2 contracts in him and that's it, right? Like, or if maybe less, depending on how you like him, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that it certainly is a factor, but I certainly think that it's lessened by the fact that you have a shortened window. The other aspect of this, though, unfortunately, is like the evaluation aspect, right? Is how to judge these guys, and you've been a proponent of this way before a lot of people, right? Is how do you judge these guys when they're 25-year-old men playing against 17-year-olds in college? Like, so I mean, they need to make
it's no
sure
surprise Indiana's the number 1 ranked team in the country. They're seriously, I saw a graphic the other day. They're almost older than the average age of the Green Bay Packers this year, which it makes a big difference. But sorry to interrupt you, but I think one of the things in round 1, I still want to take the young guys that dominated college early on.
Yes.
But like on day 2 and day 3, there's a cornerback, Keontae Scott, who I believe is 24 and a half. And like, that's the kind of guy now I would be willing to take middle of day 2, early day 3. Maybe he not going to have a long career in the NFL, but if you need a starting slot corner, plug him in and play him.
Yeah, give me Keontae Scott. Again, we don't need to get into draft too deep, but he's one of the guys I study. I love him already. Yeah, age is not going to be an issue for this guy because he's going to come in and he's going to be mature and he's going to be professional and he's going to get to work. And I think that's has its own benefit that maybe can even further kind of counter the age aspect of this.
All right, let's talk about the Micah Parsons trade for, I think, the 1,000th time. So. Is there any way the Cowboys can fix the situation? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades that you could make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. And I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. It works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed call, no missed customers. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate QB. The draft picks are settled. We know where the Cowboys are picking, and so many teams outside of the Cowboys are looking for their franchise quarterback. Have you ever wished that you could become a pro quarterback getting drafted first overall? Well, now you can, and there's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a #1 draft pick, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the #1 career mode for quarterbacks on the mobile app store, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You can sign contracts, train, upgrade yourself, build chemistry, and involve with your teammates. You'll deal with all the ups and downs of a quarterback career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama and so much more. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect when you just want to sneak in a game or two on the go. So head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special for you guys. Use promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game store to get a free boost to start your career. Ultimate QB Football Legend, QB1, it's your legacy. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You're going to get access to ad-free audio of the Locked On Cowboys podcast, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Go to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Lena, this question is from Dan. He wants to know, after talking about the impact that a edge rusher can have in round 1, and now that they've basically solved the defensive tackle situation they have, is there any options out there that you guys have discussed that actually leave you feeling better long-term than just keeping Micah Parsons through 2026?
Well, I first of all, we should examine what better means, because I think if you're talking about better than having Micah Parsons, it's going to be tough to quantify, and I think that's kind of, nebulous. So I think trying to maximize what you've got out of Micah Parsons is probably just the better way of approaching it. Right. Mm-hmm. Like I think, the general theory was that you're getting several players out of the Micah Parsons situation due to money and the draft picks. So I think, first things first is taking the resources that you got out of Micah Parsons and then making sure you make good decisions about the players that you're taking, whether that's in free agency, the money that you're using to sign other guys, or drafting guys with your picks. I think it's just about, making sure that you nail the evaluations on the, opportunities that you were given by trading away Micah Parsons, and then hope that that kind of cumulative effect of the players that you accumulated with those resources are enough to lift the defense enough to, compensate for our loss of a Micah Parsons.
I'm never going to feel good about the Micah Parsons trade because
there's that.
They should have traded him. They should have gotten a long-term deal done, whether that was 2 years ago or however. He should be here, right? And if you were going to trade him, you should have gotten more from the trade. Now, we don't need to go through all of that again. You're a year removed from that. So now it's how do you make the best of a bad situation? And I think they did a good job with Quinnen Williams, right? Like they went and got a player that can be a foundational piece. That's great. Now they gave up an additional second-round pick to get it, but that's okay. It's whatever. You're getting a star defensive tackle in the prime of his career. It's now this next step, and it's not just the draft pick, right? Because the pick 20 is coming from Green Bay, but it's also the cap space, and this is where Jerry Jones has said that they're going to, one of the reasons why they traded Micah is they wanted to have more flexibility. Now we have to see it.
Yeah.
I know that free agency can be fickle. Sometimes you're overpaying for average players. That can't be the case now. I mean, they cannot have the same philosophy in free agency as they had the last couple of years. I want them to go out and target one or two guys at market price to come in here and fix the defense. And if they don't, I'm going to be pretty disappointed.
I'm going to give a little bit of a controversial take here. I actually think they will. And the reason I do think that they will this year, as opposed to the general consensus, is because they kind of started to do it a little bit last year, right? They did talk about being more aggressive in trades and being more aggressive in free agency. And they did do some of that. So, and Jerry has, I do think that the one thing about has been, I think will continue to be truly positive about the Micah Parsons trade is that it has changed Jerry in a way that it feels like he's on his back foot, and it feels like he needs to compensate still for what happened with the Micah Parsons situation.
It feels like he's getting very defensive, which actually is good for the Cowboys.
Yes, because that means he feels like he's got to move. And when inaction has been the problem in the past, Jerry Jones feeling motivated to make moves is a positive thing. So I think that is an aspect of it that we need to pay attention to. And I think that there is a chance that the Cowboys, we know what they've got in the draft, but I think the thing that may be a little bit surprising this offseason is maybe they are a little aggressive in free agency, as they can be, because again, that's the thing is as we get further and further along in this free agency thing, it feels like, the have and have nots get further and further apart at times.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the kind of result that we didn't necessarily expect is that not as many quality players are making it to free agent because teams are able to retain their own. So,
and they're being way more proactive, making sure they get them. But you don't need to sign the top 4 or 5 free agents. No. All we're asking for is really one, right? And I think if you can find the right free agent above, they paid Dante Fowler $6 million. I think it's got to be like in the $10 to $15 million range. If you could hit on that one big free agent, I do think it could change a lot of the angles here. And whether that's a linebacker like Devin Lloyd, who's probably going to get more than that, whether that's taking a shot on a pass rusher like a Trey Hendrickson or a Khalil Mack or a Joey Bosa. I'm just naming some names who I know are free agents. I do think that could really change this defense, because one of the concerns I had about the defense last year, even with Micah, is that they just lacked depth. And you thought Micah was going to be able, because he's so dominant, was going to be able to cover a lot of those holes. And as the season progressed, you realized maybe how much he really was covering. They've got to find, honestly, I'm thinking like 7 to 8 quality defenders in one offseason.
Well, I mean, look, there is something to the idea that it felt like with Micah, not Micah himself, but because you had Micah, it was you kind of just were like you mentioned, kind of that they're papering over fundamental problems with the defense, right? And now they are kind of forcing themselves to have to reconcile that. They fixed the defensive tackle position, which has been a huge crater for this defense for years. They are now seemingly interviewing candidates who are hopefully going to come in and help kind of modernize the coverage schemes a little bit, just based on the names that we've seen. They're all like secondary coaches basically. So I do feel like if maybe this falls under the category of Jerry Jones being motivated, it does feel like they are actually trying to make ends to solving very fundamental problems that they've just kind of looked the other way on for several different years.
And honestly, Green Bay's having some of those same issues right now. And you saw it when
Yes.
Micah got hurt. They were 0-5 in their last 5 games with Micah because he covers up so much. He's that great of a player. It's both teams are going to try to figure out ways to be better without Micah this offseason. Now, Green Bay is obviously getting him back. But let's talk about Caleb Downs, who I know a lot of Cowboy fans are hoping and dreaming that he falls to them at 12. How realistic is that? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner's always a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy and reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of trying to figure out cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy to follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. And it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. And they have over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, plus free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. And when your candidates don't truly match what you're looking for, it's incredibly frustrating. But that's why you need to trust Indeed sponsored jobs. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I ever needed to hire someone for this show, I would go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need, which is real experience and not just some resume buzzwords. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Later, let's finish up with this question here from Ryan. He wants to know, we haven't had a safety drafted inside the top 10 since 2017, Jamal Adams. Regarding prospect profiles, how good is Caleb Downs from Ohio State compared to previous safeties? And is there a chance that he makes it to 12?
I was thinking about this, Marcus, and obviously I hinted at it earlier. I think he's a top 5 player. Obviously, he's going to be hamstrung by his position, like the questioner said. I was thinking about this, though. Does he have the best resume of any safety that's come out of the draft in a quarter century?
Is it? Well, the problem is I think Derwin James and Kyle Hamilton are your best, are the top two safeties. Now, Kyle
Right.
Hamilton, I believe, was a two-time All-American who was 6'4", 220, but he ran a 4.7 40. Derwin didn't have the turnovers, but he was a freak athlete. It's got to be close.
I mean, but let's dive a little deeper though, right? Because Caleb, like if you look at the particulars, right? Caleb Downs comes into college football. I think the last 2 years, the last single year Nick Saban is coaching football, right? So he got Nick Saban at Alabama, and then he went to Ohio State and won a national championship, was an All-American, and then had another incredible year where the defense was probably even better than it was last year at certain points. So I think, yeah, you know, when you kind of look at it from a prospect aspect, you know, maybe there's some arguments. I certainly think the two guys you mentioned certainly apply, but I think as far as education in
Correct.
in defense, like in college, I think Caleb Downs maybe had the best experience to get him ready to be an NFL superstar, I guess.
Well, and I agree in terms of like technique, and you know, he's going to be able to play in any scheme. I think the only reason that I'm hesitant to put him ahead of Derwin, really more Derwin than anything, is that he's going to test as a very average athlete. He does not have great size. Derwin and Kyle Hamilton, those guys are freaks at safety in terms of their size. Derwin was an incredible athlete. Kyle Hamilton, not so much. But I feel really good about him. And to answer the question, safeties don't go inside the top 5. And if you and I just sat here and ruled out safety as a option in top 5, because I don't see like the Jets drafting him at 2. I don't see the Cardinals, who already have Budda Baker, drafting him at 3. Could you see the Giants at 5 drafting him with their needs at offensive line and wide receiver?
The problem is that if Derwin James, like because that's the difference between me and is as a prospect. I mean, what's better than Derwin James, right? He was accolades, incredibly freakish athletic. You know, he didn't have necessarily the top end stats, but that's also because teams were very much avoiding Derwin James when they were playing him in Florida State. So, like, yeah,
and he went 17, by the way.
Yeah, and he went 17. So I think Caleb Downs has me more excited than I think maybe than Derwin James did when he was coming out. But I think the thing is that without that like top end elite talent at a position that never goes top 5 anyways, like if you're not Sean Taylor, like you're probably not going top 5.
Well, so and I don't see him going top 5, because I think you're going to see those teams opt for more money 5 positions. And I see a team like the Browns at 6. That's a team that only drafts money 5 positions high, and they have needs at wide receiver, tackle, and guard. So they've got to draft some offensive linemen there. I'll be honest with you. I think there's only one team that's stopping Caleb Downs from getting to the Cowboys at 12, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals at 10. Mm-hmm. And their biggest need is safety, and he's in state. I have a really, really hard time seeing the Bengals passing on Caleb Downs, considering they had so many issues at safety last year.
And just to clear up something real quick, when I said top 5 before, I meant as a player.
You're right.
Draft. You know, you're not drafting a safety in the top 5. But yes, to your point, the Bengals, you know, as the kind of worst defenses on this list, or definitely
Cowboys,
defense, yeah, they you know, they are kind of the roadblock for a lot of these prospects that the Cowboys may be interested in, because they're probably going defense too, right? So yeah, Caleb Downs obviously makes a ton of sense for all the reasons that you mentioned. But again, even the top 10, like teams just don't. It does not
happen.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that often. So, and I look, there's not a ton of top 5 talent in this draft. You're absolutely right. But there are enough edge rushers and, you know, interesting pieces that I feel like it could get muddy for them. And they may just look at the situation and go, we can't invest our first round pick especially as the Bengals, right? As the way that franchise is run, they have to hit on these draft picks, and they have to hit them at positions in which are impactful, because they're not going to go out and get they're not going to go out and pay for an edge rusher, an all-world edge rusher. They're not paying their own guys. So I think they probably have to limit it to positions like pass rushers that really are impactful.
Really quickly, Kyle Hamilton was the number 2 player on the consensus board in 2022. I mean, he was a universal. Everybody loved him. I believe he went 14 in that draft.
And that's the comparable thing, I think. I think they are probably more comparable players, right? As far as like they're different sizes and physical, but I say as far as their game goes, like
Correct.
Versatile, can do anything safeties. That's why I think it's probably safe to say that he's not going top 10.
Or 10. Like, I think 10 is probably where the conversation starts with the Bengals. The Dolphins aren't going to draft him at 11 with their safeties. So it's down to the Bengals and Cowboys. We'll see how it plays out. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.